I'm Maura Carley, founder and president of Healthcare Navigation, and I want to talk to you today about when to elect Cobra. And if you're looking for hard and fast advice, I'm bound to disappoint because this is a complex area, so we're just going to touch on some of the highlights. So again, Cobra is the temporary extension of group coverage at your expense. So you would want to consider it along with the other alternatives available to you. So let's look at some of the situations and remember that Cobra can be expensive because coverage is expensive. And if you have always had subsidized group coverage, the cost of Cobra might surprise you and could be prohibitive. And remember, now coverage in the individual market is guaranteed if you lose your good group coverage. It's referred to as loss of minimum essential coverage, which always gives you the right to purchase coverage on the individual market. Now, let's take some examples. If you are 30 years old and you're totally healthy and losing your job makes you eligible for coverage that is subsidized through the exchange or marketplace, then you would likely want to consider that because the cost to you will be a fraction of considering Cobra, and it may not matter to you that it is likely that the network of providers is not as extensive as what you had in your good group plan. But let's take another situation of a young person who is forced to age off a parent's plan and has many medical conditions, and the group coverage has a superior network with all the current providers in it. Then that's a situation, if one can afford the Cobra, one may definitely decide to consider that, since it would be a Cobra period of up to 36 months. So let's take another situation of a gentleman who loses his job at age 64. Now, a higher income person who might have been planning to retire around that time anyway might very well say, I don't want to bother looking at all my options for the sake of 1 year before I go on to Medicare. Anyway, learning about Medicare is going to be enough of a project. Let me just take the Cobra. I know all my doctors are on that plan. I'm familiar with the plan. That's my final decision. But another person in the very same circumstance might say, oh, that Cobra, that is very costly. Let me look at my options in the individual market, and there are usually a good number of them. And let me look at whether or not I qualify for a subsidy. And I know I'll only have this coverage until I'm 65 and transition on to Medicare. But I want to make the very best decision, factoring in the cost as well as are my doctors on the network and all the other considerations we've discussed. So again, people look at these things very differently, as they should. There's another situation, a sad situation, that we've seen more often than I would have thought, and that is two working spouses go on one's plan, and then the employee of that employer passes away, and the surviving spouse is looking at the Cobra alternative, even though the surviving spouse has an option for coverage where they work. because death of a spouse, again, this is the minimum loss of essential coverage that would allow you to get back on your group plan outside of its annual open enrollment. And again, just because you get a Cobra election notice doesn't always mean you need to consider it. Often, if you already are eligible for group coverage through your own employment, then it's very likely to be superior to what's in the individual market, and it's likely to be subsidized as well. So again, there are many different situations, and you have to look at them than the options in the individual market. Now remember that every person in a family covered on a group plan that is affected and has a Cobra right has their own individual Cobra right. So it's not as though everyone has to do the same thing. So think of someone in graduate school and they've remained on a parent's group plan. If the parent loses his or her job, that student could go on Cobra, but that might be very expensive compared to, say, the student plan, because the Affordable Care Act led to colleges either offering good comprehensive coverage or getting out of that business altogether. So that is another alternative for coverage other than the individual market. Let me wrap up by saying anyone who elects Cobra has to plan ahead. I mean, there are many people who choose not to stay on Cobra for the full amount they could, but plan to let the Cobra end so that they can take advantage of the next annual open enrollment period in the individual marketplace. So they start with coverage January 1st in the individual market if their Cobra may be ending, say, mid-year that year, and they don't want to have to meet one deductible under the Cobra coverage and then go to the individual market and start a whole new annual deductible. So in sum, there are many considerations to take into account when electing Cobra, but the most important thing to do is make a good choice and then plan ahead, because Cobra is temporary. And especially if you're the worker, 18 months goes quickly. So have a plan, become familiar with insurance, and do your best. Thanks for listening today, and we hope to see you soon. Take care.